Okay, behind us right now we have the latest 300 series Toyota LandCruiser, and as part of our Redarc dual battery system we need to install an accessory harness into the rear if you bought that part of the kit. And really it's the first step in getting the dual battery system into the car, because once we put that dual battery tray into position we can no longer access the grommet going through the firewall. So we really want to do this before we put the dual battery tray into place. So this video is designed to show you how to get this accessory harness into your 300 series LandCruiser. So the original Toyota battery is hidden under this cover on the passenger side. So our first step is to remove this cover. By pushing these two tabs, we release the plastic at the front and just pull towards us, removes that cover, and we can see the location of the existing Toyota battery. So our first step is to get that battery out of the way. So we'll start by disconnecting the negative battery terminal with a 10mm spanner or socket. Just loosening that nut off will allow us to wobble that loose and just sit that negative terminal aside. And then we want to do the same with the positive. So we'll remove this plastic cover, which just clips on. And we'll just sit that aside for now. And same step with a 10mm. Just loosening that off. And the reason we do the negative first is it just makes it a bit safer. We can't arc out the positive if the negative's off. So we always want to make sure we do the negative first, then move on to our positive, and just a wobble will remove that positive terminal. Okay, now that we've removed the positive and negative cables from the battery, we now have a foot. There's two bolts holding this foot in, two 12mm heads. We need to remove that foot so that we can get our battery out. So just using a 12mm socket now. Remove that first one. So now that we've got those two bolts out, we can remove the foot. That's our little L bracket there, and just place that aside. So now it's time to lift our battery out, and to prepare for that, maybe we can put the positive away, and if we just move it behind this little plastic cover, it's just going to sit there. The negative's pretty well as far out of our way as we can. That'll allow us room to get the battery out. Just going to get my hand under the back and just lift it out. So the next step, we want to remove this black plastic platform that the battery sat on by removing these 12mm bolts. So now that we've removed all of these 12mm bolts, we can remove the base of the battery tray. Okay, so now that the base plate has been removed, we have this steel guard that needs to come out as well that the battery sits on. So there's 3 bolts, 12mm bolts again, holding that in. So 2 at the back there, 1 at the front. And now we can lift this metal base plate out and set it aside. Okay, so now that we've removed our battery, we can see that we've made a lot more room for us to be able to access this main grommet going through the firewall. And you can see someone's already installed accessories into here. So one of these is taken, but there's 2 here, 2 options to run accessories through. So we're going to use the spare one on the outside of the vehicle here, and we're going to start by just cutting the top off of that spare one. So that makes way and opens us up with a gap there. So what we'll do next is spray a little bit of lubricant in there. It's just going to help our cable to move through that grommet and into the inside of the car much easier. Just like that, and we'll spray the lubricant on the cable as well. To prepare for grabbing our cable once we feed through the firewall, we need to remove some of these plastic trims in the vehicle. So we're going to start in the passenger seat area, and we're going to take away first the kick panel down the bottom, and these are all just held in by plastic clips. So we're just getting our fingers under and releasing one side of the clip. You'll hear them release, and then once we've released one end, we can just work our way down. Just like that. So we can sit that one aside. Next we want to take away this one near our footwell. So there's just a 10mm plastic nut there. We just undo by finger. So remove that and set it aside. Once we've got that off, we can just pull this plastic panel towards us. So that's released that. We now have a plastic panel under the glove compartment, also just held in by plastic clips. So we just with our fingers, we can see those clips, little tabs there. We just want to push them in and release and just work our way along. Second one there, third one there, the fourth one there. So they're just plastic clips, and then we can pull this whole thing out together. That's really given us great access. If we lean up into here, we can actually see the big firewall grommet that we saw from the engine bay and our cables coming through there. So once we feed in from the engine bay, we'll be able to grab it here. So the accessory harness that we're installing today comes with an Anderson plug as part of the accessory harness, which means that Anderson terminals are connected to the end. So we need to feed that through our port here that we've just cut the end off. So what I'm going to do to help us out, and the way I'm going to do it is just feed one through at a time. So I'll use one as a snake to pull the other one through. So we'll start with our red one, say, and I'm just going to spray a little bit of lubricant on there as well, just to make it easier. And so we'll start by feeding that one through our hole. So that's gone through quite easy. So now that I think that's through on the inside, I'll just duck in under the glove box, see if we can pull that cable through. Okay, so that cable has come through and we've got it fully into the passenger's footwell. So now we're going to use the one that we've got through as a snake to pull our negative cable through. So I'm just going to use a little bit of insulation tape here. Just tape one to the other. And it's probably a good idea to do this a little bit further down the cable, just so that there's no lubricant that will make our tape slip. So we want our tape to grip well. And now that we've got the tape on, we can put a bit of lubricant once again over top of that area that we've taped. I'll feed that right down there. And now I'll walk back into the passenger seat area and I'll just pull that red one, and that's going to pull our black one through with it. So now that I've pulled our black and our red through, we can untape the tape that we've used to attach those to each other. And at this point I've likely got a lot more red through than black, so I'll probably even them out first. Maybe just pull a bit of black through till they're about the same length, and then we want to pull all of our excess cable through. And if it gets tight, we can spray a little bit more lubricant on the cable in the engine bay. This still seems to be coming okay. It's starting to tighten up, so I might just spray a little bit more on there. Yep, that's freed it up much better. Pull it through, and then if we come to the engine bay, you'll notice on our accessory harness, we've got sleeving. So we want to push all of it through until the heat shrink on the end of our sleeving actually goes into the hole. And that's going to give it a nice install fit there. And we've just got enough sleeving to get us up to our battery connection. So next we want to continue routing our cable towards the rear of the vehicle. So we need to take apart the trims, the same as we've done in the front, we need to do in the rear. So a similar step, we've just got a foot panel here, which is just held in by plastic clips. So we just want to get our fingers in behind and release those clips. And we can see we've made way. So now we can push our cable from the front to the rear. We can get to here, and then we need to make room to get to the back where we're going to mount our socket. So if we step to the back of the vehicle, so in the back of the vehicle now, we're going to end up feeding our cable from the rear seats into the rear of the vehicle. The jack point is in here, and you can see that opens us up to electrical harnesses from Toyota sitting in here. It's also where we're going to mount our sockets right here. So we're going to be able to make sure we've got clearance to drill for our cable to come out. So this is a good port to have open if we're going to put our sockets here. Another access point as we route our cable is this cup holder in this model here. We can remove this whole panel, giving us full access down into the Toyota electrical harnesses that run behind this plastic panel. So I'll just jump in here. And this is just held in by plastic clips again, so it's just a matter of maneuvering, just some upward force with our hands. So I'll just release those clips. Just with my finger under there. And you can see that whole thing comes out. Now if you can see in there, we've got existing Toyota electrical harness through there. Our cable's going to be fed up through here so we can reach in, grab it, cable tie to electrical harnesses as we need and get our cables down to the rear. So we're going to use a similar technique to route our cable towards the rear, and that's using one as a snake for the other. So I'll use the red as the initial one to put through, and it is actually a good idea to use the red. You'll notice once you start doing this that you'll often be able to see the red a bit quicker than you can see the black when you're trying to look for the cable. So often use the red as the pull cable, and I'll tape the black to it. And also in this case, I might just tape that little loose one to make it easier to get through. So that's our first preparation step. Now we want to follow the existing Toyota electrical harness that we can see here. There's a couple options. You can feed it through under these little clips, or probably easier to just release these clips. They're just held in. If you get a little screwdriver, we can just release the cover like that from inside there. And that means that we don't have to feed the whole 7-meter harness through. We can just clip it in like that, clip those back down. Like so, and clip those back down. Now the next part we need to get through here, and it's easier just to feed this through rather than trying to remove this whole plastic panel. So we can see the Toyota channel through there. I'm just going to line that up, feed my cable down, and once I get enough through, I can just find it in the rear seat area. So I think that'll be enough. So we'll go to the rear. I can see the red one, which is handy. Now my red cable's gone all the way through to here. There's just a little plastic clip holding the white piece of plastic to the pink plastic there. So I'm just going to release that, and that'll allow me just to pull this whole white plastic up. Just gives me a bit more access and I can see my cable straight away. So same deal here. I'm just going to release this, make it easier. Like so. And I can pull my whole cable through. Now I'll pull all the slack through like that. Now what I want to do at this point is go back to the front seats. Yeah, just stop it for a sec. So we're back at the front seats, and you can see I've pulled that cable through, but it's come a bit too tight here. So what I want to make sure I do at this point is use some cable ties to sit the cable into position and get our right length. So we know we've got the right length at the engine bay. So I'll start by just cable tying it to the existing Toyota harness and holding the length that we want to end up with in the front. Sit that into position so that we can get our foot panels back on. I'll just put one down here. And that's going to hold our position with the cable. So we can leave those for now, head to the rear. Now that we've got the right length in the front, we can sit our cable into position here, clip the pink one back on. I'm just going to leave the white one off because it's probably going to make it easier for us to work with our cable. The next step is to remove this plastic. Just to make it easier to get our cable towards the rear, we're just going to remove the seatbelt mount here. So there's a plastic cover on the top. and then a 14mm bolt here. That's just going to allow us to bring this plastic further away from the vehicle body and just give us more room to route our cable towards the rear. Just like that. And now what we can do is just pull this plastic out, and just plastic clips once again, just push it away from the vehicle, just enough to see our harness and push our cable through. So you can see in there now, we can see our Toyota electrical harness. So what we want to be able to do is push our cables up towards the rear and follow those. Okay, so we've got the end of our cable, still got the tape on to use one as a snake. So I'm just going to follow the existing Toyota harness, just feed it into there, and we're going to be able to go straight to the back and quickly grab it in that cup holder area. So I don't need to put too much through, and our plastic's probably just going to hold it there. So now we'll move to the back of the vehicle. If I jump up in here, I should be able to, yeah, I can see the cable down in there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but I can just reach down straight away. And there's our cable. So we'll do the same, we'll pull all of our excess in so that we can make sure we get the right length. But it seems like it's all come through now. So now that we've got all of our cable through to the rear, it's just the reverse process. So we'll put our steel tabs back into the plastic here, just line them up, push them into place, get our plastic back down. Now that that's into place, we can pull the cable back the amount that we need, sit our plastic back into position down here, lock our little pink clip in back there. And what we've got here is just two little plastic clips on the end, so we want to line those up with our holes in the interior. Hold that in place, line them up, and just a little tap is going to place those back into position. Get our rubber seal over the edge like that before we do our final tap. And just check our rubber seal sitting nicely the whole way. And now that our plastic interior is back together, we can put our seat belt back on. Ensure that's nice and tight. And then put our plastic cover back over there. So now that we have our cable into the rear of the vehicle, it's time to decide where we want to put our sockets. So this customer's going for triple sockets, and just to show you the two options, we have a surface mount. So it's designed to sit on the surface of the plastic like that, is one option. Another option is what's called a flush mount, which means the sockets sit flush into the plastic. So you can picture it kind of like that, but up there. The advantages of each one and disadvantages. Firstly, this one requires large holes drilled into the interior. So we need to make way for those sockets to go fully into the car. So two big 32mm holes plus a square cut out for our Anderson. So large hole in the interior. Also, you then have your sockets plugged into the interior, to the sockets facing out into the cargo area. So, but a lot of people like the look of these sockets in there. So that's the advantages and disadvantages of that one. This one being a surface mount, the biggest advantage is probably we just need a little hole for our cable to come through into here, and all of our electrical connections are made inside this little tent housing. So it gets mounted there with two screws. We don't have to drill massive holes into the interior. The other advantages is that our plugs, when we use the sockets, are plugged from above straight into the sockets, and therefore are protected from any cargo that would move in the rear. So today we're going to install one of these, but this was just to highlight the difference between a flush and a surface mount socket. So we'll start by removing our tape here, as we no longer need it to feed through. So now that we've got our cable to here, we want to get it probably into this area. So I can actually reach through this gap, and I can reach my hand in from the jack port over top of the storage compartment here, and I've actually grabbed our cable. So I can pull the excess through, and you'll notice we do have a little bit of excess on this side because we're putting the sockets on the same side as the auxiliary battery is mounted. Our harnesses are made long enough that the sockets can go on either side. So if we wanted them on the driver's side, we've got enough cable to get across to that side, or we can come through the firewall, go behind the dash and follow the same procedure down the driver's side to get our sockets onto that side, and the harness is long enough for that. Because we're going on the same side, we've got a little bit of excess that will just wind up inside. So using the cable ties supplied with your kit, we're just going to grab our harness, well, we've got good access here, and just cable tie it to some existing Toyota harness that I can feel down in there. You might not be able to see, but... And then I'm just going to cut the little tags off our cable ties. And now that we've secured our harness, we can reinstall our cup holder. And that just sits back in. Just line up our plastic clips. Once it sits into place, just a tap, sits that back into position. Now in this particular model, we have a lot of clearance behind here, but certainly it's important that no matter what car you're working on, to check before we drill any holes into the interior that there's nothing behind here that we can interrupt or drill into. So I can feel with my hand in here that it's absolutely clear. I'm also going to give it a visual look, and I can tell there's absolutely nothing mounted there. Now we do have a storage compartment in this section that comes up quite high. So what I'm going to be able to do is I can still mount my sockets over top of the storage compartment, but I'll probably have to come in with my cable outside of the storage compartment, maybe in this area, and then wrap the cables around. So I'll get a little bit of a mark there. This is where I want my sockets to go. I can feel that I'm definitely clear, and I can put a hole through there just to mark my position. Check again that we're clear in that full area. And then I'll go up in drill size. I'll put a 10mm drill bit through now. Now I'm just going to use a stepper drill to make this hole a bit bigger, or we could just keep going up in drill size. So we've got a nice big hole to get our cable through now. And just one at a time. So we'll start with the red. Feed it through, pull it right through, and then with the black, just getting that last one through. There we go. So we have our sockets prepared here, pre-wired, the two round sockets, and we just need to connect our electrical cables. So we'll prepare them by removing the screws here for the Anderson to mount to. Now the first thing we want to do is connect to our Anderson. So you'll see a negative on the Anderson there, and our black is negative. So it's just a matter, on our Anderson pin we have a little lip on the bottom there, and that lip needs to grab on the metal tab inside the Anderson. So we're pushing it through that way. So our lip's on the bottom, making sure we're on the negative, and just give that a nice solid push from the back, and you'll hear it click in. You'll see how it's grabbed the tab there. And just to make sure 100% pull, give a little tug there, we know that it's secure. Same step with our positive, into the positive one. Positive marked on the Anderson, our red wire goes into there, and just giving that a nice firm push, we can hear it click and see that it's grabbed its position. So the next step we want to do is connect our piggy tails, positive and negative, to the piggyback terminals here. So red to red. Sometimes to make this easier too, we can loosen our sockets just to give us more room to play. So just loosen that ring, and then we can push our sockets out and give us a bit more room to get onto the cable and tilt it towards us as well. So we can easily get our red one on there now. Like that. Same step on the black one, we'll just point that one up towards us. Push it on, and then we can do up our collars again and lock those sockets into position. Like so. So now that we've got our two round sockets wired up, we just place our Anderson into position over top of these two screws, lining them up with the two holes in our Anderson, and just bending our cables back into the center of the plug. And now we can secure our Anderson using the bolts that we took out. And then just secure our Anderson. Like so. So now our sockets are ready, they're pre-wired in there. So you'll see a little pack that comes with our kit. In there, there'll be a spare fuse, which we can just set aside for as a spare. And then we've got 2 mounting screws. So I'll just get one of those ready. And what we want to do is just make sure that none of our cables, that they're all inside the little housing, so that we're not going to pinch them as we mount our sockets. And then we want to place our sockets into position, like that. Ensure that it's exactly where we want it. And we'll start by putting 1 screw in, and then we can 100% line it up. So there we go, we've got 1 screw in. We can make sure it's all nice and square. Prepare our 2nd screw. Okay, so now we've done up our 2nd screw. Our sockets are fully mounted and secure there. So now with our excess, I'm just going to make a little loop with it. And we've got an existing Toyota harness in under our storage compartment, so I'm just going to tuck that in. I'll put a cable tie around it first actually to hold it together. I'll just stow that under our storage compartment and secure it to the harness so that it can't move around. Cut off our cable tie tag. So now that our accessory harness is complete in the rear of the vehicle, we just want to reverse and put our trims back on. So first step will be to put our kick panel back into position. We want to line up the hole there actually, where we took off our plastic nut, and that goes into a stud out of the Toyota body. So if we lay in there, put that over there first. And before I really push that home, I just want to make sure my rubber seal has gone, sitting correctly there. Once that's sitting nicely, I can just give that a little tap and finish doing up that little plastic nut. That's got our kick panel back on. Next I want to do the cover that goes up under the glove box. Now you see 3 locating feet on the back of the plastic, and you can see holes in the white plastic that holds our fan under there that these match up to. So you can see under here, we've got little holes there. I want to slide them in, line those feet up. And once I've lined them up, next I want to line up our 4 little plastic tabs in the front here. Starting with that one, I can see it's in. Next, and just work my way along. And there we go, that's all that holds that little plastic cover in. So we've got those 2 back on. Lastly, we want our kick panel here. And same thing, we're just sitting that into position. We've got our plastic clips that we want to line up, and also these clips go into our little pink spots there. So we'll just sit it into position first. Sit that down, make sure our rubber seal sits nicely there. And as we're doing this one, because of the length of it, we could probably start by pushing this end in and then just work down with our rubber seal. Push it all the way in. And once we get that last bit out, then final tap down that end. And that's got our kick panels back together. Okay, so now that we've mounted our sockets in the rear and we've routed our accessory harness up to the engine bay and our batteries are all connected, the final step is to make our electrical connections for the accessory harness. To do that, we'll remove this little shroud above the batteries. Now there's one plastic clip, same as the front grille that we took out. So I'm just pushing that tab in like that, pulling the clip out and releasing it. So it's the exact same one that holds our grill in above the radiator. So just place that aside for now. And then we can lift this whole plastic shroud. There's feet locating it in the back, so kind of pulling it towards us and up, we'll release it like that. And we can just sit it on top of the engine at the minute. That gives us way more access and room to work with our electrical connections. So we want to connect to our negative terminal of the auxiliary battery and the main terminal. And this may vary depending on the brand of battery that you're using here. But most deep cycle batteries will have like an 8mm stud or an 8mm bolt that goes into a thread into the battery. Most AGMs, lead acid, deep cycles and lithiums will have that. So let's make the connections to this battery. So we'll start by removing our and then connecting our cables. So the black one to the negative terminal and our red one, marked auxiliary battery, to the red positive terminal. And we can secure those. But lastly, we just want to secure our fuse holder. So we're going to, in this case, we've got the MIDI fuse holder on this accessory harness. I'm just going to put some cable ties around the battery hold down clamp with the other MIDI fuse holder for our Redarc charger. And we can cut off our cable tie. So our accessory harness is fully installed now. We have power to the sockets in the rear. So if we've got a socket that's got a voltmeter, we can go and check that we have power. So let's wander down the back and check out our system. So this customer has got a 12 volt socket, an Anderson plug, and our USB socket has a voltmeter incorporated. So instantly we can see a battery voltage on there, 12.4 volts at the moment. And that's going to be handy when we check our Redarc charger as well. So the last step is putting our battery cover back into place. So you'll notice 2 feet here going into 2 locators there. So we'll locate them first. And the next thing that holds it in is our clip into the relay and fuse box lid, and also a clip into this plastic shroud. So we'll start with this one. Just to push down there, it's got that one located, and then realign this one, push down, and our battery cover is reinstalled.